Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me okay? Are they muted or, okay, all right, so I guess you can't talk back to me. I wish I had something like that when my kids were growing up. This is Julie Kozlowski. I'm the Director of the Community Development Division for the Wyoming Business Council, and I want to thank you very much for your participation this morning in this training. We recognized it was mandatory and sort of ominous with saying, you know, even if it's an open grant and you don't attend the training, you can't continue to draw funds, and if you don't attend the training for new grants, you won't be allowed to draw funds to get your project started. All of that sounds harsh and overbearing, but I just want to offer you a little explanation why. We were audited some time ago by the Office of the Inspector General. This came about because they had some issues with HUD and how HUD was administering programs, and so you know that saying about things rolling downhill. So once HUD got audited, or then they came in and they audited us too, because they thought if we weren't getting good direction from HUD, it was likely that maybe we were making mistakes too. And in fact, we were making a few mistakes, and we had to rectify those, and one of them was that they said we just didn't have enough training available to our grantees. We weren't giving you enough guidance, and so that's the purpose of this. It was a requirement of that audit that we provide training, and not only provide training, but make it mandatory. And so that's why we had to do this. We don't like to be overbearing like this. It's not usually the style. I hope you all know that, because I think you have a couple of terrific people to work with Sandy and Stephanie, that just isn't how they usually operate, making things mandatory and threatening to cut off funding and all of that. But that's our hook to making sure that everybody understands how important it is for this program to have an opportunity to continue in the future. With that said, I would just say that, you know, the thing about CDBG is that it's complicated. There's a lot of federal regulations that are attached to this money, but none of them are really rocket science in and of themselves. It's just that there's a lot of pieces and parts, and so if you can tackle them one at a time, they're usually pretty manageable. And I encourage you to contact Stephanie, contact Sandy. They're you know, and Sean Jones is very helpful in terms of the GrantSmith and Salesforce aspects of submitting reporting and whatnot. So if you need help, the staff is here to help you. I am available to you, and we hope that we can help you to administer your grant in a way that keeps us all out of trouble and creates some great projects for the people of Wyoming. That's the whole point of it, is to help our communities. And so with that, I will let them get underway with their training, and I hope that it's beneficial to all of you. And Sandy, is this being recorded?
It is being recorded.
Okay, so you know, in addition to the materials that, you know, you can probably get a copy of the slideshow. You'll be able to watch this again if you need to.
Right.
And so I hope it's helpful to everybody, and I thank you for your time and appreciate everybody being on the webinar today. And here in person, we have several folks here in Cheyenne with us, so that's nice. Thank you.
Thank you, Julie. So this is Sandy Quinlan, CDBG Program Manager. I think you all know me. I know you know my email address. So anyway, we're going to go ahead and get started with the training. So this is just
But he did the right arrow.
there we go. Stephanie stepped out of the office for a second, so now you're just as my hands here. Okay, so we'll just start out with the contents of what this project is going, or what this program is going to entail. It's going to entail project administration, resolutions and policies, environmental review process, labor and procurement, financial and audit, project checklist and grant list. I'm going to go over the first few. Stephanie will be going over the project checklist and grant list portion of the training. Okay, project administration. List of files. I think all of you know that we send you a letter and tell you what all of your files should contain, and we hope that you follow these instructions, because when I come to do my closeout, this is going to be pertinent for us to have a clean closeout. We also have, closeout. We also have a new pre-approval authorization. I wanted to inform you guys all about this because if you're applying for another CDBG grant, we now have a pre-approval authorization that will be conducted by staff. Hold on a second. I don't know why, but there's something recorded in the background on this. Know what that was about, but anyway, okay. So just wanted to let everybody know that we have a new process now for pre-approval authorization before you can even apply for a CDBG grant. When we had our OIG audit, they came in and said that not all of our projects met the national objectives. So what we decided to do is come up with a pre-approval authorization worksheet that's about 5 pages long. They'll send it in to me, and actually the deadline for this year is February 15th, and if you send that in to me, I will get an authorization to you as it's saying whether you qualify or not by March 1st. That way, if you don't qualify for the CDBG grant money, then you don't spend all your time and money on something that's not going to work. So then what happens is if you do get approved for it, then the deadline for the applications this year is June 1st. And it will go to the December board meeting. You have all been already qualified and gotten your grant, but I just wanted to make you aware of this in case you wanted to apply for another grant. So I don't know if people can hear me. There is something recorded. Okay. All right. So this is the list of files for your CDBG grant. Like I said, if you follow this instructions, it'll help you out tremendously. And the list of files for the CDBG grant is the application file, the environmental review file, the civil rights file, the financial file, the labor file, and the audit and closeout file. And I guarantee you, if you follow these instructions, like I said, when I come to do your closeout, it's going to go much smoother. And that way it'll make sure you have everything in your file, too, that you need to have. Okay, the environmental review process. The introduction to the general information is called the ER archive. There are 5 different kinds of environmental reviews. I did not go into too many specifics because I want you to contact me, or I will also let you know which environmental review you need to complete. All the projects are different, and so I didn't want to get into too much detail because I could take 2 days doing a training on environmental reviews. So all that information is on our website, and I suggest that you go to the environmental review guide and read that first before you start your environmental review. As you all know, you can contact me with any questions that you have, and I'm happy to answer them. Biggest thing to know is You have to have the request for release of funds form 7015.15 completed, and that's the request for release of funds that you send to WDC staff. Once you send that into WDC staff, then we'll do a 7015.16 form that we will complete and send to you, which says that then you're going to be able to request your funds. But not until your grant agreement is fully executed, which means all the signatures need to be on it before you can incur any cost. Do not incur any cost until you have that fully executed release of funds form. Why environmental review? To protect the health and safety, to avoid or mitigate impacts that may harm our clients, which would be you and your community. Also to avoid mitigation and any harm to the surrounding environmental and project site. To avoid litigation that could stop the project on environmental grounds, avoid monitor findings and or loss of financial assistance to your project. There's something that is like, say there's asbestos in the building, or there's a cage or something like that, it could stop your project. WDC staff can actually request those refunds back. Also required by federal law and regulations, the National Environmental Policy Act of 1969. The environmental review regulations is citation 24 CFR Part 58. This regulation allows local units of government to perform the responsibilities that would otherwise apply to us. Regulations titled Environmental Review Procedures for Entities Assuming Such Environmental Responsibilities, which means that if you get the CDBG funding, that's your requirement to make sure that all of those responsibilities have been taken care of before you go forward with the project. Once again, do not commit HUD funds to a proposed project prior to release of funds authorization. HUD form 7015.15 and execute grant agreement. Once again, like I said, do not incur any funds. Unless you are going to be paying for some of that stuff yourself, you can pay for that, you can do that, but any of the funds you're going to use the CDBG funding for, you have to have that release of funds in an executed grant agreement. And you must oversee actions of sub-recipients. If you guys are the sponsor of the grant, say in the case of Shedwater, and you have a sub-recipient or a business, you have to make sure that they're following all the rules and regulations. As in the Shedwater project, they're going to be creating low to moderate income jobs. They're required to complete income level sheets for all applicants before they can even be interviewed, and make sure that 51% of the people that have been offered the job or been notified of the job are low to moderate income. And this is your responsibility. If you guys decide to sponsor a grant and you have a sub-recipient on it, you're responsible to make sure that they follow all those guidelines. WDC staff will help you do that, but that's your responsibility. And if you don't do that, funds can be requested to be paid back to WDC, so you have to be really careful with that. Okay, resolution and policy. Fair housing resolution. Everybody says, why do we have to do that? We're not doing any housing, and also residential anti-displacement relocation plans, and completed 504 form. These have to be completed by every grantee. And it doesn't matter if you're not displacing anybody. It doesn't matter if you're not doing any housing. This is a requirement by HUD, and we have to make sure that we have those. If you don't have those completed, that means we'll love you a lot until they're completed. And also, too, we won't let you draw any funds until all those forms are completed. We have copies of all of those resolutions and forms on our website. Davis Bacon Act, compliance and reporting. This is citation 29 CFR 5. It's required by every project for CDBG except for planning. The requirements: federal labor standards provisions, bonding and insurance, labor guide. All contractors and subcontractors must be registered in SAM.gov. This is a requirement. Used to be, we'd make our contractors make sure that they were registered in the SAM.gov, but now all the contractors are required to make the subcontractors be registered in that. We won't let you out of funds unless we see proof of that. And you must have verification that they are not on the department list before awarding the contract, which means you need to get a hold of us before you award a contract. Make sure that the contractor is not on the department list. We also, too, won't process drawdowns anymore until you show us proof that all contractors and subcontractors are signed up in SAM.gov and they are not on the department list. Also, too, Section 3. This is a form that all contractors don't like to fill out because we only have one business that's registered in Section 3 on the website, but it's a requirement by head, and the contractors have to keep track of it, and they are required to fill out that Section 3 form, even though we know that most of them are going to be all zeros. It's a requirement. The contractors have to complete it. The disadvantaged business directory, that's actually on the DOT website, and you were required, when you were going out to bid a project, you're required to go look at that list. If you have any disadvantaged businesses in your area, you're required to give them notification that the project is going out to bid, so they can know if they want to bid on it or not. It's a requirement, so just make sure you keep note of that in your file. Wyoming preference for labor. This is kind of a funny one because you have to do the Wyoming preference for labor, which means you have to get a hold of workforce services and get certification that you tried to get in touch with low to moderate income people, and that's a requirement. But the 5% Wyoming preference for Wyoming-owned businesses, which is required for all state contracts, is not a requirement for CDBG. We can't give a preference for Wyoming-owned businesses, but they have to do it for all state projects. So only a portion of the Wyoming preference is pertinent to CDBG funding. Davis Bacon applies to all projects funded in whole or in part through federal government dollars. That means if you have a project that has DRC funds in it, Wyoming Water Development funds in it, the entire project has to apply to, or has to use Davis Bacon wages requirements. No exceptions. And that means if I even know about, you tell me that part of the project, you're going to apply for a DRC project, say I'm at the site visit, I'm going to tell you that that portion is also required to Davis Bacon wage requirement. All contractors and subcontractors must have verification from SAM.gov that they are not in the department list. We already mentioned that. All laborers and mechanics employed on such projects, they're all required to be paid the Davis Bacon wages. All buildings and project types have to follow the Davis Bacon wage requirement as well. This is a snapshot of the SAM.gov. This is the website where all contractors and subcontractors have to be registered in. We just thought we'd show you an example of what that looks like. Volunteer labor. Grantee is required to register volunteers. They're not required to pay them Davis Bacon wages. As you told me on your project in Torrington, that some of your workers are going to be, these are government workers that are going to be doing some of the work on this project, correct? Are they town employees? So that's an in-kind cost, so you're not required to pay the Davis Bacon wages. Volunteers too, which Big Brothers Big Sisters might have volunteers that do some work on the project. You have to have them registered on the sheet showing the name of the volunteer and the hours they work, but you don't have to, it's not required to pay the Davis Bacon wage. Davis Bacon applied to auditors, inspectors, business owners, or other personnel not performing physical or manual work at the job site. That means, like with you, Alex, if you did some work on the site, you're not required to pay a Davis Bacon wage to yourself. You don't probably even have to pay wage to yourself, but you have to tell me, you have to put down on the payroll sheet your name and the hours you worked. We didn't used to have to do that, but we have to, after we got our audit, they said that we're required to make business owners do that. State, local, or tribal government employees, yeah, like we talked about before, Davis Bacon wage does not apply to them. They're already getting paid by the state before local government, so yeah, so it would be like double dipping if we tried to. We don't reimburse for any of those fees anyway, so so that's not required. How does that affect you? You need to designate someone on your staff to ensure all bid documents and contracts contain federal labor standards provisions and applicable Davis Bacon wage decisions. Now, as we talked earlier before, I want to see all the bid packets before they go out to bid. I'm not going to know some of the regulations and some of the work that's going to be done on it, but I want to make sure that all of the documents that are required by CDBG are included in the bid document. Because a lot of times people think they know what some of these things are, and they don't. It's like the Federal Labor Standards provisions is listed on our website. It's like 5 pages long, but people always forget that, and that's usually one of the findings that I always have when I go out to my closeouts, because people don't put it in. And then also through the Davis Bacon wage decision, needs to be reviewed by CDBG staff. Ensure contractors and subcontractors are not debarred before awarding contracts. Contractors are responsible for subcontractors verification. I can't make that clear. I know I've said it 3 times, but everybody thinks they don't have to do that. We didn't always enforce that before, but we do now. We have to have notification that those subcontractors are not on the debarment list and are registered and stamped. If you don't, Stephanie's not going to figure it out. Ensure compliance by monitoring weekly payroll reports, and you have to get payrolls weekly. You can't get them monthly, you can't get them semi-annually, or bi-monthly. You have to get them every month. We need you to forward 3 payroll reports to the Wyoming Business Council with your first drawdown. We didn't used to require this, but we do now. We want 3 drawdowns to be sent in with or 3 payrolls to be sent in with your drawdowns before we will pay that. So if we want to verify that you guys are paying the right wages, we had one closeout where we actually had to pay the compensation to one of the employees. They were off by a penny, but they have to, and we have to go back and pay them that amount. So we just want to verify it. We want to make sure that you're doing it right before we get to the end of the project. So we want those sent to us with the first drawdown. We want like 3 set with the middle, drawdown, and then at the end, of course, we want 3 payrolls at the end, but we'll check those too when we come in. We can check those when well, no, we're not going to sign a payment when we get those, are we? That's right. Yeah, and that's why we just become, like Julie said, we become big sticklers because, when we got our OIG audit, we got reprimanded for not doing these things. So we want to make sure you're doing it right. Like I said, we want to make sure and do it so we can fix it before the end of the project because it makes it a lot easier. And keep good files. Create a hard file for all wage decisions and weekly reports. This file must be kept for 5 years after project completion. And we have a useful technical guide listed at that website there that will help you out a lot as well. Anybody have any questions?
Sandy, does all of this wage and payroll Davis Bacon apply to our grant?
See, and that's an interesting question, Linda, because it doesn't here. We're doing job creation, but we went and did some research, and I actually emailed my sub representative because I was wondering if it applied to that, and it doesn't because yours was acquisition. And yes, and so it doesn't. I'd kind of try to follow it a little bit though, if I was you, just to be on the safe side, but, if they came, OIG audit, what happened when they came and did our audit is they went out to our other projects that we granted it out to the communities, and they audited them. And that's a scary thing. I mean, you had 4 federal auditors, auditing your project. So, I'd say, on the safe side, just if you have questions, just give me a call and ask. Okay, like I said, you guys, this was just acquisition, so it doesn't really apply to you. Right. Right, and right, and see, that's what we're going to be watching on your project, Alex, is the job creation.
Yeah.
So that's a little bit different, and we don't do very many of those. So it's been a learning experience for sure.
So his records on employees will be in my office too, so that it's like a double check and they come in and audit us both at the same time.
Yeah, and I have a note on our calendar, I think, for a couple months to come and do a video on that training for check water. So, yeah. And we'll get to other things to talk about. Programming comes up, we'll talk about that later. Okay, contact WBC staff for wage decisions before going to bid. I have a website on the slide telling people where they could go to find that wage decision. I don't do that anymore. I want you to contact us because sometimes they get the wrong wage decision and then that gets the bid packet and that ends up being a finding for you, and let's just make sure we know that doesn't happen. Ensure that contractor is displaying proper signage, and we have those on our website, and that means it's a poster, and we'll see that here in a bit, that we have to have posters at the project site. I want you to take a picture of the posted signage and submit it to staff, or at least have it in your file, so that when I go to do your closeout, that I see that, I know that you could post it on a wall at your work or something, but as long as we show that, that you made the effort, that's what we care about. Receive weekly certified payroll records from your contractor. Like I said, I can't specify that enough. You need weekly certified payroll from your contractor. I don't care if he says he only pays his employees once every 2 weeks. We need them monthly and weekly. Verify compliance with wages paid with Department of Labor wage-based determination form. Forward the certified payroll records to CDBG staff. Again, with the first drawdown, the drawdown, the last drawdown. We're going to require that, and if you don't do that, then actually we have a spot on our grant smith now that if it's not checked, then it automatically won't let us process the payroll for you, or a drawdown for you. Okay, wage rate. Like I said, call staff for the wage rate information, and the wage rate will display state and county wages, and it'll be for different construction types, like building, heavy, highway, or residential. Most of ours is building. At the top, you'll find the general decision number, and we want you to print the email sent from staff and keep for your records. You have to, because that's how you're going to verify the wages that you're paying, is by the wage determination. So we want that with your payroll. And this is what the wage determination looks like, and it gives different wages for different types of jobs that will be on the site. And those are different for every county. The labor standards notice. This is a requirement by staff, by us, before we'll process payrolls anymore, and it just tells us, who you granted it to, the wage decision you're using, who the contact is, and who's verifying the information. This is the U.S. Department of Labor payroll form. Please use this. I know a lot of people have their own payrolls and they'd like to use them, but this is just easier for us because this has all the requirements from HUD for your payroll, and it just makes it easy for us to verify the payroll. So
case to which we use this for employees that Alex is hiring, or just for the contractors and the work he's doing now?
That's for the contractors and so forth, but like I said, this stuff doesn't apply to you guys. Because you guys did acquisitions, so it's like a one-time drawdown.
Okay.
So this stuff, I mean, if you were doing a different type of project, you would use this, but not for Alex. We're happy about that. This page here, we need to make sure that contractor or owner must sign the payroll, or an authorization letter must be submitted for other staff to sign the payroll. Like, this is another one that when I go to do closeouts, we have findings on a lot. People have their payroll clerks sign them, or have secretaries sign them. Can't do that unless you give them authorization, and I have a letter in the file stating that they are authorized to do so. Otherwise, the contractor or owner must sign the payroll. And here's a sample letter of the payroll authorization letter if you want someone else to sign the payroll. Employee interviews. Used to verify that contractors are paying their employees properly, including overtime and fringe benefits. This is to be conducted by grantee staff, not contractors. Some of the projects I go to, they have the contractors complete the interviews. It doesn't make any sense, because guess what? Those are the contractors' employees. He's going to write down what he wants on the interview sheet. So staff has to go out and conduct those interviews. I don't care if it's your public works guy or who's somebody that works with you, but it has to be somebody that works for the community, not the contractor. You need to conduct several interviews forms for each group of workers, such as electricians, plumbers, laborers. It's like at least a couple for each different category to make sure and verify that everybody's being paid correctly. You don't have to do interviews on every employee, but I want to put on a couple three for each position. Here's the Davis Bacon poster. It's also available in Spanish on the WBC website. These have to be posted at the job site. Some people put them on their work trailer. Some people put them on like their bathroom door. I don't care where it is, but it has to be listed on there. We want it in English and Spanish. And the reason I want it in Spanish is because a lot of the workers that we have are Spanish people and men. So we want both of them available for the employees. Okay, Section 3. The Housing and Community Development Act of 1968 includes a provision in Section 3 that is designed to assist local economic development while improving neighborhood economic conditions. Section 3 requires that recipients of certain HUD funding, I can't hear me because I walk around. Sorry, guys. Anyway, I'll try to talk louder. Section 3 requires that recipients of certain HUD funding provide, to the best of their abilities, job training, employment, and contracting opportunities for low or very low income residents or business interests in connection with projects and activities in their neighborhood. Requirements is to be completed by a prime contractor and needs to be included in bid documents. Applies to CDBG projects in the amount of $2,000, $100,000 or more. Section 3 is different from minority and women-owned business considerations, as it is both race and gender neutral and instead focuses on those with low income. A table to assist you with determining income levels provided by HUD on an annual basis and can be found on the Wyoming Business Council website at that website address. Now, what they're talking about is they want to make sure that you make these jobs available to low to moderate income people. HUD or CDBG is supposed to benefit low to moderate income people, so they want to make sure that you're providing that information to low to moderate income people so they can apply for those jobs. That's who they want us to provide those jobs to. Like I said, the contractors don't always like to fill this out or keep track of it, but they have to, and it has to be included in your bid documents. Any questions on that?
And if somebody asks a question, can you repeat the question that they asked?
So in other words, they couldn't hear the questions
Yeah.
that were asked, and then I answered what they didn't know what the question was. Right. Gotcha. Okay, here's the Section 3 form. It's not hard, and the contractors are required to fill this out. Like I said, 9 times out of 10, it's going to be zeros, but there might be one low to moderate income job that is provided, but otherwise, this form is usually all zeros.
And make sure to fill this form out completely, because when you send it to me, I have to submit this information to HUD, and we just don't want misinformation that's, a year later going to come back on Road and Haunt us.
Okay, outreach. CDBG grantees are responsible for making sure there is outreach to make low-income persons in your community aware of potential job training or employment that will result from a CDBG project. Contact workforce services and other employment agencies in the area. You have to get a hold of workforce services, and actually there has to be a certification showing from them that you have done outreach to contact low to moderate income individuals. And we also want, if you do any other outreach to employment agencies, or if you post that notice of the job creation somewhere else, we want to know it. And that'll be important for the Chugwater project.
Okay.
You need to get a hold of workforce services, make sure that they give you that certification. I posted, the notification of jobs. We've talked about that, Alex. Post it somewhere where low to moderate income people could be able to see that notification. You guys haven't started that?
I posted over at the town hall for the one this time.
At the town hall?
Yeah, but I'm not saying posters down. So I'll reach out to my workforce.
Yes. Yes.
But it was posted at town hall for 5 months.
Yes.
So.
Okay, this is for the Chugwater project. They're doing a convenience store there, creating a convenience store there, the one that blew up. So I asked them if they posted this notification of the low to moderate income job creation, and they said, yeah, they posted it at town hall. They had a change of administration, yeah. And so he said that they get a hold of workforce services, and I don't know where else you could post that, maybe at the grocery store? Is there a grocery store in Chugwater or something? What else am I thinking of that's there?
Post office.
Maybe the post office.
Got a bulletin board out there.
It's been there too.
Yeah, it's been there too?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Really? Yeah, actually I took it down, Alex, because it was getting really weathered, but I'll put it back up, and.
Have you guys conducted any interviews yet for that?
We've got applications.
You've got
Yes,
applications?
with the.
And we have the sheets filled out? Okay.
Thank you to her.
Okay. Good. The most appropriate manner for compliance may be incorporating this into the agreement that's made with the prime and subcontractors. Contractors who receive more than $100,000 are required to comply with Section 3 in the same manner as the grantee that provided funding to them. So that's just what we talked about there with the outreach, with providing those jobs to low to moderate income people. Okay, mid-project monitoring. This is something new that we've just started after our OIG audit. Mid-project monitoring will be scheduled as the project is bid out and the work is started. Stephanie and I are working really closely together with the communities to schedule these. They can't tell you how important it is that you guys contact me after the project's been bid out and we have at least one payroll that we can see. Because we'll probably schedule mid-project monitoring as we do a guesstimate of when you're going to start the work and when you'll have a payroll or two, because we have to do these mid-project monitoring. Now we don't, this is a must. And the monitoring will be to ensure that all grantees are in compliance with all CDBG requirements. The biggest part of that includes the bid packets, which I'm trying to review before you even bid it out, and then the payroll. Like I said, that's the most important parts of these. But we also want to see where you're at and want to see that the work has started on the project, so we'll visually see that. So so please notify me or Stephanie to schedule those. Grantees must submit drawdowns as costs are incurred, so staff can schedule required mid-project monitoring before the project is completed. We've had several projects that they don't do their drawdowns to the end of the project. I don't want that. We can't do that anymore. You know, some of the towns or communities can pay the drawdowns, and then they'll submit all the drawdowns at the end of the project. Can't do that anymore. So yeah, I know you can't pay yours. A lot of the communities can't. Some of the bigger communities can do that. We don't want to do that anymore. Don't do it, because that will put us, you know, that will cause a problem for us as well. So don't do it. And grant this will not allow drawdowns to be submitted if mid-project monitoring has not been scheduled. So in other words, if you don't schedule that mid-project monitoring, we're not going to pay the drawdown. So you need to do it. The problem with that is if you complete the project, then you're just going to try and do it at the very end, and we won't know how far along you are in the project. We try to, you know, monitor that with the quarterly reports. It's hard to keep track of that all the time. Or people say, well, we just bid it out, or we're just partway through. Well, just like with one of them, I have one that's the Cody covered. It got completed in 3 weeks. You know, and we just can't do that anymore. I mean, it's great that it gets completed. That's awesome because it means that it's done, but at the same time, we have to do those new project monitoring now. So, financial and audit. Program income reporting. Single audit requirements for any projects over $750,000 and change of real use property. Okay, single audit requirements. The form that everybody's required to complete, whether you submit an audit or not. If you're exempt, then you'll mark that on there, and if you're not, then you're going to tell us that you have an audit scheduled. And all projects are required to complete this form. Program income, this is a new one. We didn't think we had program income, but after our audit, we found out that we did. General program income is funds that are created by the CDBG projects, such as lease or rent payments. The program income is held by the local government, which would be you, but all program income needs to be tracked and must be used for the project or returned to WGC. That means if you create program income, such as I have a project in Carbon County, it's for Union Wireless. They have program income that they're creating, they have lease payments. And we thought that they could just use that program income for CDBG-like projects, but after our monitoring, we found out that they have to use it for that project alone. If they don't use it for that project, it has to be resubmitted back to the WDC for us to distribute to other projects. So that's kind of a different caveat than we've had before.
Like for the same equipment for the project?
No, it's like for leasing a building. Like Union Wireless right now is leasing a building, and those payments are going to the community. What I hope will happen, what we plan on happening, is those lease payments going towards the purchase of that building at the end of the lease. If that happens, that's for that project, so they don't have to pay it back to us. If they even have $1 left out of it, if they renegotiate their contract, then any of that money that's left over has to come back to us. Yes. And we talked about that before, but and I don't know I don't know that I saw the lease for that, but I know you guys are leasing property from the community, right? And so the community's sticking that in a separate account.
Yes.
And I called and tried to talk to the mayor, but we haven't gotten anything scheduled yet. But is there any kind of documentation that that's going into an account? Because I don't think I've gotten anything from that yet.
I can give you like a bank statement that shows that it's separated from like the operating account.
Okay. Yeah, because that's kind of what I had requested from the mayor, but we didn't get to talk very long. So if you could get something with documentation of that, that'd be great. Because, I think on that project, the lease payments are going towards the purchase of the property. Is that correct? Or Yeah, I know that brought questions to my mind, but I don't know them. Brain down training. The grantee is required to report all program income to WBC in their quarterly report and annual reports for 5 years. Used to be that our grants only went for 18 months to 2 years. You have to report on these grants for 5 years now. That's due to the OIG response as well. And most of the time, most projects, the program income will be 0, but you still have to report it. So we'll be sending you, Stephanie will be showing you what we'll be sending you in grants, Smith, so you can report that to us. It's 5 years after the closing of the grant. Yeah, but we have an automated system, so I mean it's not like it's too hard for you. You just put a 0 in there. Yeah, exactly. So she asked, so it's 5 years after the close of the project, and I said yes, after we come and close out your project, it's 5 years from that date.
So ours is 5 years from last year.
No, I haven't closed your project out yet. So, and I don't know if I can, because with your job creation, that one's a little sticky, because I have to keep reporting on that, and if I close it out, then I can't report on it. So most of the grants, they're going to stay open, because that's the only way we can send the reports to you. But I don't know, we'll have to try and think of something to put a date down on those. We'll have to talk about that, Stephanie. Yeah. Any questions on that? Change of real use property. Grantee agrees that any real property acquired or improved in whole or in part using CDBG funds in excess of the threshold for small purchase procurement shall comply with the standards described in 24 CFR Part 570. These standards shall apply from the date CDBG funds are first sent for the property until 5 years after closeout of the project. They said that's something now we have to think about, because now I'm going to have to think of a date or how we can track this, because it'll be 5 years after we close it out. So what this is saying, and I'll use Union Wireless again. If Union Wireless decided that they wanted to use that building that they're leasing from Carbon County, and they wanted to change the use of the real property, otherwise change the scope of the project, then they'd have to contact us and see if we think it would fit within the CDBG national objective and activity, because it would have to, fit one of the national objectives and the activity, so it would have to serve low to moderate income people. We wouldn't want them to move maybe a real estate agency in there or something like that, because they might not be considered low to moderate income. So you just have to be real careful if you did decide to use or change the use of the property. And now, Stephanie's on.
Okay, so this is Stephanie. I'm the Senior Grant Loan Specialist. What I've put together is a project checklist. This is for you. I recommend printing this out and putting it in the front of your files. I know it's a ton of information. CDBG in general just has so many different things. So we try to make kind of a quick view for you to reference when you're going through your files. When you're looking for what you need to submit. And of course, you can always call us and we'll walk you through that. So I'm just going to kind of briefly touch on the highlighted items we went through. So here at the WBC, we have 6 files for each project. So we start with an application file. This is what includes the grant application. Our new pre-approval form will be in there, and then any pre-award correspondence or board information that we have goes in that file. The environmental file includes the copy of the environmental review record, the request for release of funds, advertising related to environmental comment, and then HUD Form 7015.15, which is the request for release of funds, and 7015.16, which is the form that we send you to let you know that the form's been released. So with that form, we'll also send you the executed grant agreement, and you'll receive a letter that lets you know that you can use the funds. So make sure that you have all 3 of those things, the 7015.16, the copy of the executed grant agreement, and then that letter authorizing expenditures of funds before you spend your funds. That's very important. A civil rights file, this is required by HUD. In this file, you have to have the residential anti-displacement and relocation form, the fair housing resolution, and the completed section 504. Even if it doesn't apply to your project, we have to have that. These are all available on our website. And I can definitely, if you have questions while we're doing that, I can walk you through that. A labor file is going to be all of your Davis-Bacon information that we went through. So in there, you're going to have the completed labor standards notice, the wage determinations that we sent you, the bid, procurement, and debarment information. So the debarment information is going to be a screenshot of Stamp Backup showing that the contractors and subcontractors are registered and not debarred. And then you're going to have your payrolls and any other information that's related to your Davis-Bacon, like copies of the poster, the picture of the poster that's posted. All right. And this information right here just says that the prime contractor is responsible for checking all subcontractors for debarment. It's mandatory, and we must receive verification of registration. All right, so just some information again to remind you, contact staff, the WBC staff, 10 days prior to bid opening to lock in the most current wage information. Let us review your bid packet just to make sure that everything we need to have in there is in there. Make sure prevailing wages are paid to each class of worker that's at the site. And then the wage determinations, wage preference requirements for labor, as well as the federal labor standards provision must be included in the specs as well as the general contractor's agreement. So you should have all that information in one folder, so that when we come to close it out, it's all right there, and we can get through it a lot faster. We have, one of our big hang-ups when we do closeouts is all the labor information isn't there, or the bid documents aren't there, or it's not all completed. So making sure to check this, and then letting Sandy or myself know if you have any questions on what is needed. That way you have a complete file. Section 3, which is new-ish as our requirement. It's not new, but it's more reinforced, I guess.
Yeah, because HUD didn't ask for that form for the last 10 years or something like that, and then all of a sudden they're like, you guys need to submit this. And so we're like, oh, okay. But I think 98% of the grantees in the United States did not submit those, so we didn't feel too bad.
So this is for recipients of $200,000 and more, and we're subcontractors or subcontractors to receive more than $100,000 on a CDBG funded project. This stipulates the good faith effort that must be extended to employment and job training opportunities to low and very low income residents and business opportunities. A reporting form which is on our website, which we showed you the example of earlier, will be provided to document measures taken to comply with Section 3. Be specific on what you do to advertise for these jobs, because I have to verify I have to basically justify with HUD. Because we're a smaller state, we usually do not make the Section 3 requirements. So I have to let HUD know exactly what each contractor did to try and make that happen, to show that, in good faith, we tried to make that happen. A financial file, this is going to be for your drawdown requests, your vendor invoices, your quarterly reports, and then any other financial related correspondence. If you and I email back and forth on questions on a drawdown, just include that in the file, so it's for your records. So the quarterly report, which is the progress of the project, is due within 15 days after the end of each calendar quarter. And I have a slide on here, I believe it's after this one, that shows the quarters and then the date. And then the annual reports are due on the 1st of every May for the 5 years following the close of the project. So that's the actual date that we close it out. And again, we'll determine something to make that date a little bit more prominent. So the person that's responsible for reporting on these reports will receive notices prior to the due date of the report, and I think it's 15 days prior. So every quarter you're going to receive a notice to remind you to submit your quarterly report, and every year prior to the 1st of May, you'll receive a notice letting you know that the report is due. That way you don't have to set reminders for yourself. The drawdown requests that are submitted, those must have the invoices showing the start and end dates of service and as much detailed information as possible on the work that was completed within that time period. A new thing that we're doing because we're doing mid-project monitoring is that Groundsmith will automatically trigger once 50% of the funds have been expended, and if mid-project monitoring has not been scheduled, we can no longer pay out any more of the drawdown. This is why we're asking you to submit your invoices as costs are incurred. That way we're on the same timeline as far as the percentage that's being expended, and we can really close out, or we can really monitor your project at a midpoint.
Do you want to talk a little bit about changing contact if they get
Oh, yeah. So it's very important to let us know when you have staff changes, clerks, mayors. It's important to let us know this. That way we can update the project. That way, 2 years after your closeout, the new person that's going to be reporting on this, the new clerk or whatever, is going to receive the notices. If not, then we're going to have kind of a breakdown in communication on who I should speak to get the information, or a person who's just coming in might not know. So it's important to kind of keep everybody in the loop about any changes that are made. The last file that you'll have is a closeout file, and this is going to be for when we come and physically close out the project. We have a de-obligation letter, which is if there's any money that was left over from the project, that's basically releasing it back to the WBC as money that's not been used. The closeout letters, typically you'll receive a conditional closeout letter that will let you know what we're missing. A lot of times it's the audit form, the uniform audit reform. That's because we need it for the next year. But make sure you get that to me because we can't do a final unconditional closeout without all that information. And don't worry, I will let you know if I don't have it. Okay, so this page is just kind of your information on our quarterly reports. And I'm actually going to switch some screens around so I can show you our graphics system. It's still in a weird spot. I'm actually going to show that photo. Okay, bear with me just 1 second. Does anybody have any questions as far as all that information? Because I know it's so much information.
I guess, Stephanie, on the fair housing resolution, that went to council. Do the other 2 forms that you need in the file need to be in process, or is it something I just print out and put in my file? I'm talking about the anti-displacement and the section 504.
Okay, and the anti-displacement will probably need to go to council. Okay. That one will need to be signed. The 504 form, which I should have been a little bit more specific on that. We need to make sure that you guys have somebody assigned to the 504 regulations that knows codes and policies and so forth. And I want the clerks. Because not to be mean, but the clerks don't know what the code is or anything, so you need your policy person or whatever to be designated. But that also needs to be signed by, I think, it needs to be signed by the commissioner or the elected officials.
So, like, the mayor? Or the mayor?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, the mayor can sign it, because that's the official, elected official, but, yeah, because on a lot of the other forms we put, people put the clerk down there, and if the OIG auditor came to your place and asked you questions on how high this should be, how high the toilet should be, or the rail should be, or something else, you wouldn't know what that is, so
Yeah.
I've been telling everybody to make sure that you have somebody that knows the codes and policies of ADA requirements being listed on the sheet, that the elected official will sign that.
Okay, so it's something I print off and take to council?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And as well as the audit, this audit form is on the website, so I can just,
Yes.
print it off and have it signed.
Yeah, all the forms are on the website.
Okay.
Yep, and I will show you that too on our new website. Okay, so we've completely redone our website. This is our new look. So I'm going to just show you how to access the CDBG information as well as the grant online reporting information from the website. So it's WyomingBusiness.org. We've moved kind of everything you need to the top. So we're primarily going to focus on community assistance. And the first drop down, which has infrastructure development, and then, of course, the community development block grant. So this has just kind of the overview of information regarding the CDBG program. All of the forms, everything regarding from your application, environmental, the fair housing information, the abundance of labor information, and anything else that we're going to ask you for is available under here. If you have any issues getting any of these forms, just let me know.
We'd like your feedback on that too, you guys, when you're using the website, let us know what you like and what you don't like. I think it's much easier to use, I think things are a little. Yeah, exactly.
When you take, it's like, what?
Yeah, exactly.
So it's a little different. Currently, to access the Grantsmith database, you have to go under business-ready communities. We're going to eventually get a link under the CDBG, like where the forms are, is going to be in that same area. But for now, you'll go to community assistance, business-ready communities, and then you'll come down here to the middle link where it says online grant and report management. Drop that down. This also has tutorials on, the different ways to complete the report, submitting reimbursements. To hit the grant code system, you'll go to this blue login button. And once you log in, this is the page you're going to see. So your first time login, you might not see, your projects might not all pop up like this. So you'll want to just, where it says view, make sure it says all projects and hit go. And that's going to show you everything. And Cody has a lot of projects. So I'm going to actually change this view back to just open projects. All right, so the 4 tabs across the top, those are going to kind of be your quick links. To look at specific project information, which is what we're going to do, you'll click on the project link here. We're going to look at Cody Covered. This is going to give you an overview of the project, the start date, when we have it, the construction end date, which is when you need to have, obviously, your construction done. But the project end date is going to be the 5 years after that you have to report. So you can check that. This will be something that we'll update once we close out your project.
So that's where we're going to
Yeah.
get into knowledge for that.
Yeah, so if we end up closing out the Cody Covered project,
Next week.
yeah, next week, then we'll update that so that it's reflected to 5 years of the actual closeout date.
Okay, so Stephanie, on that project end date, like in Chugwater's case, do I leave that open? Because don't I have to input all my information for it to be submitted? And so I'm not sure of our project end date on our conference request.
So speaking of your actual quarterly reports versus your annual reports. Okay, so with your quarterly reports, you will say that it's been completed because the construction's been completed, and then your annual report is just going to be for that year. So year 1, year 2, year 3. So,
and that's where we're going to be able to report on the jobs.
right.
Okay. So we will be able to close it out and have
As far as construction goes.
Right, or acquisition.
Mhm.
And then, but the reporting will go on. And we also have to report that in my other federal IDIS reporting system too. So I think that'll work.
Yeah. And there is a section in the annual report that'll show you that is for job creation, I believe.
Job creation, program income.
All right, so it has your budget information. It has how much you have remaining. If you have any questions about that, you can just reference this page. What we're going to look at is how to do a drawdown request. So under the budget line items, under the performance measures, we have the drawdown request area. Click on the new drawdown request button. All right, so an important thing I want to point out here is the start and end dates. This is something that I kind of have to go back and ask for these to be updated. So the reporting period start date, this is going to be the date of your earliest invoice. So if your earliest invoice was January 4th, that's going to be your start date.
It's just for that you're reporting right now.
Right, just for the invoices that you're doing. So if you're sending me 4 invoices, and the invoice that has the earliest date is January 4th, that's going to be your start date. Your end date, if it was January 30th, that's the latest date of the invoice, it's going to be January 30th. If your invoices have any work with any dates outside of those ranges, make sure that that's referenced and that's cleared up. Because otherwise, I'm going to ask about it, accounting is going to ask about it, and it just kind of holds everything up. I'm just going to put today's date in here. Click Save. All right, so this will bring you to the request that's been created. You can see up in the top box that has the drawdown number, you can double check your start and end date that you input, and then it has the approval status. So right now it's in draft. You want to make sure that after you complete everything that you submit it, and then you go back and check this approval status to, I believe it'll say pending. Once I've approved it and once Sandy's approved it, that'll then change to approved, and at that point it'll be out of our accounting department and they'll be processing it. So to add line items, you may have a construction and non-construction, you may just have construction. Typically they'll have both. You'll go all the way over to the right, and on the blue link where it says DDR line item, you'll click that. And then you'll click the button that says new DDRLI. Okay, so if you're submitting several invoices, you only have to make one line item. You don't have to do one for each invoice. That kind of can confuse the system. So as long as they're all construction invoices, do one line item for construction. If you have non-construction invoices, go back in under non-construction and do one line item for the non-construction invoices. So you can just put a brief description of what it is. The total invoice amount, don't try to figure out the percentage of what CDBG pays. Like if we're only paying 80%, don't put that in there because that's going to throw the system off, because the system's going to automatically figure in that amount. So make sure it's the total amount of invoices you have. And then click Save. All right, so then you can come in here, if you have to go back in for a non-construction item, you can do that. Make sure everything matches as far as your amount, and then click Drawdown Request Form. And this is going to open a new screen. It's going to pre-fill with your request, So we have the $100 here. Cody coverage has 100% reimbursement. If it was 80, it would say that there, and then the system would figure out, how much is going to be paid from that. What you'll have to do with this form is print it off and have the responsible official, like the mayor or the county commissioner, sign that.
Can anyone else sign it?
The clerk can sign it. So that's okay, the clerk can sign it. It says responsible officials, so, yeah, if the clerk is primarily handling, the reimbursements and everything, that's totally fine. All right, so once you have that printed out and signed, you're going to take this form along with all of your invoices, the documented information. Like a lot of times engineers will have just a basic invoice, but they'll have a work log separately that states everything that they did for that invoice. We'll need that as well because we need to make sure that everything that we're paying on is applicable to the project. So you'll take that information, you will scan it into your computer. You'll click down here on Attach File. You'll click Choose File, and it'll give you a, where you search for it. Make sure you click Attach File, otherwise it's not going to work, and then click Done. And to make sure that it works, you just come back in and you can see where it is now attached. So one thing you want to make sure you do is click Submit for Approval. A lot of times people forget to do this, and then I don't know, it's sitting out there, and a few weeks goes by, and you're wondering where your payment is. Well, I don't know it's there. So make sure you click Submit for Approval. Then I'll get a notification, and then I can get that processed. And I'm not going to do that on this one. Okay. So we're going to go back into the Code Cover project, and we're going to look at reporting. Okay, so for quarterly reports, it's going to give you the date of the quarter and the date that it's due. That way you can kind of keep track of where you are. And like I have said, you're going to get notifications in case you forget, you get busy. That happens. So click here to open this report. That's what you're going to click on. And then questions 1 and 2, those are going to be applicable to your CDBG project. Those must be answered. Questions 3 and 4 may or may not be applicable. If you have an economic development project, you have to answer those questions. Otherwise, you don't have to answer it if you don't have an answer for that. And then these last questions down here for business committed projects, you can leave that blank. That is not CDBG related. Again, you'll want to click Submit for Approval for that. And to edit it, you just go ahead and click Edit. All right, and then I'm going to show you the annual report. Okay, so your annual open. All right, so make sure that this report is for the year you're reporting on. If you're in year 2, don't include year 1 information, just include year 2 information. There may not be anything happening, and you can just say that, that there's been no changes. If there is, make sure you get as detailed as you can with that. And then the performance measures down here, click to open that. And these are new to me, so I'm not as familiar. Yeah. Not really sure. I did. Maybe if I go on edit. I'm not sure why that's not working. Because I'm trying to present it. So you should, we'll have to look at this. We'll kind of get with our grantsmith guy and kind of look at that a little bit further. There should be, and it's possible actually that code covered, since they're not really having any program income or anything like that, but it should still stay, you should still have the option of, yeah, of being able to put 0. So I'm not really sure why it's doing that, but it typically would have, you know, like the description, program income, job creation. We'll get that looked into. The difference between the annual form and the quarterly form is that the annual reporting form has to go through and be signed. So you have to, kind of the same with the drawdowns, you have to open it up.
Okay, so Stephanie, I'm sorry, how did you get there?
Oh, okay. So there is, kind of towards the bottom, there is a button that says performance reporting form. So just open that up. It'll pre-fill with everything, and then you print it out and have it signed and scan it in. Yeah.
We're making the elected officials sign these because it's up to them to make sure that that job creation is there, and they're responsible for that program income and the reporting of it. So that's why we didn't do this before, but now we're like Julie said, we're much stricter than we have been in the past. So.
If you have any additional information, you may or may not. It just kind of depends on your project. You can attach it here, just any supporting, like maybe job applications or, you know, anything like that. And then again, make sure you submit for approval.
That's where you put the income funds.
All right. So I think that's all really that we wanted to touch on for Grantsmith. If you have any questions or, you know, if you're unsure about anything, let me know. I do not mind getting the million emails. I would rather you ask than, you know, us having to go back in later and correct something. So if you need me to walk you through it, I have no problem doing that whatsoever.
Yeah, Stephanie and I we do quite a bit of technical assistance, as you guys know, because there's a lot to it. So were you done with yours? Because I had a couple more things I was going to go over. Okay. All right. So if anybody needs an amendment to their grant, if you need to change your budget for like non-construction or construction, and any of those need to be changed, we have a different process for that now. We used to be able to just have you give me a letter, and we could just get it done like that, but it's a much more extensive process now. OIG and HUD want us to have where we make different parties sign on these amendments now and change budgets, or if there's a little bit of a change of scope of work. So now you have to send me in a letter, and I actually have to do a memo to Julie, and she's got to approve it before we can make changes. So that process takes a little longer than it used to. So I just want to let you know, because I know, you know, construction will be starting, bidding will be starting again, and construction will be starting here soon too, especially if we keep this nice weather we've been having. But, and then also too, I wanted to update everybody on planning grants in case anyone is going to be submitting a planning grant for this next round. Planning grants are kind of on a hold right now. HUD has decided that they didn't know that they just had they don't think that we're kind of beating the national objective on some of our planning grants. So we're waiting for an official response from them on our response. So if you're planning on submitting a planning grant this next round, we'll do a pre-approval on it, but I can't guarantee that it'll go through because I'm not sure how long. They don't have a deadline when they can respond to us. So if you're planning on doing a planning grant, just let me know, or just you can do the pre-approval. You can pre-approve it. Doesn't mean I'm going to be able to submit it to the board this next year. So I just wanted to make everybody aware of that as well. Our funding has been approved. Our annual action plan has been approved, but we don't have our funding yet still. We haven't gotten our grant agreement, so we hope to get that soon. So, I'm sure everybody's working on getting their environmental reviews completed. So let me know if you have any questions on those, and we can get those completed so we can get grant agreements going. So that's all I have today. So if nobody has any other questions, then I think we're done. So I want to thank you all for completing the training, and I know some of you have been through this a few times. If you have other grants that you get awarded, you'll be doing it again. So we have to do it annually. Yeah, we have to do it annually. And there's a lot to it, so it's always good to refresh your memory. So once again, thank you for participating in the webinar. I appreciate it. So thank you for your time.
Thanks.